So today we're going to talk about the American Dipper. But before we get into that, I just wanted to read a little follow up from our friend at the Winking Titmouse that sent us those owl pellet pictures.
Excellent.
So she sent a note and said, "We definitely have barred and great horned owls around and hear them frequently, sometimes on our gutters at night. Our field is surrounded by woods and we have a creek with crawdads. I'm also wondering if we might have prairie crawdads as well. Thanks for sharing and for the podcast. I always enjoy listening and love that you all are doing it. Have a great weekend, from Erica." And then she sent a picture of both a great horned owl and a barred owl and like a little video too where you can hear it calling. So I'll make sure to post those on our social, but they're super cool. So thanks for the follow up,
What a
Erica.
cool place to live.
I know.
I
What a
know.
life. That's
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah.
I know. That was my first thought too, John. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, I want to be there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally.
I, as far as anybody knows, North American dippers do not have pellets.
Okay. Wait, so did you say North American dipper? Are they not American
Well,
dippers?
actually, it's a interesting biogeographic story again with the family Cinclidae, which is what the dippers are. There are 5 species, and they're all actually they're biogeographically separated and have a really interesting distribution. So American dipper is only found really in North and Central America. And then when you get to South America, there are 2 species. And then over in Europe, there are also 2 species in Europe and Asia.
Oh. Oh, okay.
And
Oh, I
and
didn't realize that.
yeah, no, they're an incredibly interesting group of songbirds, of passerine, oscine songbirds.
This is my favorite bird in North America.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
Very
It's the
cool.
That's
cutest.
awesome.
It's absolutely the cutest bird in what it does, where it lives, how it behaves. So, but we have to start with John Muir's quote about this, about the American Dipper, which I find it captures it perfectly for me. His music is that of the streams refined and spiritualized. The deep, booming notes of the falls are in it, the trills of the rapids, the gurgling of margin eddies, the low whispering of level reaches, and the sweet tinkle of separate drops oozing from the ends of the mosses and falling into tranquil ponds. So that's his
Oh, I love that.
description, and it's absolutely, yeah, it completely reflects that bird.
So have you
Yeah.
guys seen them?
No, we
No.
have not. We've just seen, I know you sent us some pictures of when you
Mhm.
saw one recent or fairly recently, John, but we've never seen him in the wild, no. So yeah, can you tell us about when
Well,
you've seen them?
as Shannon was saying, I mean, dippers are one of the most specialized passerine birds in a lot of ways. So
Maybe
their
birds in
habitat
period,
is
not
yeah,
just limited to songbirds, but birds period.
Mm.
yeah. They're basically freshwater penguins, kind of, in the sense
Oh,
that they just completely adapted to being on these rocky streams. And there are other birds across the avian class that specialize on streams too. There are some ducks and some flycatchers and wagtails, and so it's not, but not to the level where these birds are literally occurring along mountain streams down to the coasts in various parts of British Columbia and Alaska, but basically never get away from those. So
mhm.
if you look on eBird or look at the species account for North America, there are a few records of dippers showing up, and I think there's one record for Texas even, which is just absurd to me. But
Mm.
everything else is just completely defined by the Rocky Mountains, and there's a population out in the Black Hills in South Dakota, which is genetically distinct, and really illustrates that even across a landscape like North America, these birds are only living along these rocky streams. And so for me as a kid, especially growing up in Arizona, um, getting to a stream meant like looking around for dippers, and yet you're not just going to get there and see a dipper because they're so common that they're easy to see. And so I've
Well,
always
you
loved
will
the
if you're
fact
in the
that
right part of the world.
even then, I mean, it's
They're pretty common. They're pretty common on Vancouver Island. I saw them all the time. And they're called dippers because they dip. So that's what's charming about their behavior. They pop up, they don't hop, but they go up and down pretty frequently. So that's the dipping part.
And they're,
like John
they're
said,
completely specialized on eating invertebrate larvae that are living in the water and some small fish sometimes.
So
they're
don't
actually
migrate.
swimming underwater
They
in this
do.
really rough water.
So they have,
Cool.
if you, when our son was little, he had no body fat and he went in the water and he would sink like a stone. And he would, of course, grab me. And I'm like, dude, you're going to drown both of us. He couldn't float. He couldn't dog paddle because it was so much energy. He just sank. And so these birds have done that themselves. So their bones are denser so that they can stay underwater for longer periods of time. So they need to have dense bones in order to sink to the bottom, where they'll use their
cool.
wings, kind of like flippers, to go underwater. And they can stay underwater for really long periods of time, 30 seconds at least, which is a pretty long time when you think about it for a tiny little bird.
In rushing water.
Yeah. How do they not just get like swept away?
They're really
so
strong. They have really big
I-
wing muscles. Like the musculature associated with their wings is really strong, and it's not because they fly long distances. It's because they have to not go downstream. Besides, if you're too floaty like that, you're never going to eat. So it wouldn't last if you didn't get some adaptations.
What I like about it is it's a niche. It's a part of the environment that no other birds are really competing with you to any extent. And so from an evolutionary standpoint, you need a lot of modification. I mean, these guys are nobody would mistake them for non-birds or anything, but within the birds that Shanny's describing, within the passerines, like they've got a lot of really neat modifications to help them do what they do.
So most birds' feathers are in tracks on their bodies, like linear lines. And if you separate the feather tracks, you can see skin. But that is not what dippers do. Dippers, their feathers are so densely packed that you don't see skin under it.
Oh.
And they have an oil gland that's very well developed. Because if you're going to go underwater, water's actually rough on feathers. If you do that frequently, they abrade pretty easily. And so if you see pictures, I should have looked to see if there's a picture. But if you see pictures of them, they can look silver under the water because of the air bubbles that are trapped around the bird as it tries to protect itself as it goes down. So
Cool.
you would, even if you got a tiny piece of skin, you could almost certainly tell what bird it came from just because of the way the feathers.
And they're occurring all the way up into northern Alaska, where as long as they have that their movements have been studied, and what goes on is that if the streams don't freeze over completely, which often really rushing streams don't, even up in the high mountains or in the northernmost latitudes, they'll have permanent territories. They're permanent residents going into that water in temperatures that can be way, way below freezing during parts of the winter. And their metabolism has no trouble with that. It's it's really
they
neat.
have a low, apparently that's been measured, they have low metabolic rates, which kind of makes sense. You have to conserve energy if you're going to do that. They also have more hemoglobin in their blood than other things. That facilitates them spending that much time underwater holding their breath. They have this, and you can kind of see it in a lot of pictures. They have a membrane that crosses their eyes when they go underwater. They also have really well-developed eye muscles that can change the conformational shape of the eyeball to make it see better, to improve the acuity of their vision underwater. So they have all these really really interesting specializations on top of being little tiny round fluff balls. Their wings are tiny,
and
very round. What do you mean?
and so I just described them as sedentary, and yet their distribution goes up from northern Alaska all the way down into Costa Rica.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
And so, and it's because as long as there are these whitewater streams, there's a niche for them.
Oh, cool. It's kind of like they're crazy to look at because just when you look at them with your eye, they don't seem like they're that like fit for that. Like everything you're describing seems like a very specialized, like you really have to research them to understand that they have all these adaptations.
Not if
Because
you
when we were looking
actually,
at videos,
not if you
oh, go
grew
ahead.
up, not if they're one of the first birds that you watched when you first went hiking on purpose to watch birds. And for me, the very first time I saw them with any, like outside of someone telling me what it was probably the second time I went hiking with these people. It was in a rushing stream and there was a waterfall, and the bird, it flew right through the waterfall. This little
Wow.
tiny bird flew
Jeez.
right through the waterfall to the side of the stream. The streams it goes on are really pretty small too, and not very deep. So they're shallow and narrow. And so if you see it like that, you're like, holy cow, that little tiny bird just withstood whatever that
Wow.
giant big waterfall with all of its water is. And they nest behind those waterfalls in the cliff rocks and stuff like that. They'll nest behind there and do that pretty frequently. So,
Cool.
yeah.
What are their nests like?
They build
Do we know?
a domed nest, kind of. It's made of two pieces, and there's a side entrance in the dome. And I guess the people think that scientists have said the dome part protects it from rain getting in. It's made of leaves and twigs and small fuzzy things, moss, a lot of moss.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're fairly good structures. It's not like, the whining mourning dove nest. It's got some actual physical structure to it.
But RJ, so one of the things when you look for them and you're trying to figure out whether they're in the area is that they'll poop on rocks. And so you can often see, if you're looking for them, you can find rocks that have whitewash on it, just like you would look for whitewash under a tree with owls in a cemetery someplace. And at the same time, what I like about them is, there have been plenty of times where I've been on these rushing streams and I'm like, there should be a dipper here. And you don't see one. I mean, you've definitely got to
You're not in
work.
British Columbia then.
Well, and
Or
actually,
you
one of
don't
the
have
things
to
I was
work
thinking
that
about with
hard.
that, it'd be interesting to know what time of year you were doing that, because it's another bird where I would say, like, very few people see groups of dippers, but you're right. In the non-breeding season, what happens is the dippers from the mountains up on these small streams that Shannon was talking about come down to the coasts in the Pacific Northwest. And so you can get a higher density because they're feeding along sometimes, they're even feeding along the saltwater areas and must be getting some really different stuff as a result.
And if when we talked about red ruff fruit crows, we talked about that low kind of intense sound that it makes. Dippers make high-pitched sounds, and that is because their sounds are competing against rushing water. So if you're going to communicate, you got to get outside of the frequencies of the water, or nobody's going to hear you, nothing's going to hear you. And so the sounds that they make are high-pitched. It's really different.
Wow.
And they're slate gray. So some of the other species have some browns and some of them have some whites. But one of the interesting things about that is they completely blend in with the environment that they're living in. And vocally, I would say that's got to be an incredibly difficult environment to evolve in, with the one caveat being that in a sense, your entire world is basically longitudinal. It's basically the length of those streams. So I'm
Oh, yeah.
interested. I was interested. They talk about territoriality, and they're definitely territorial, but the territory is described in the number of meters of stream that they're covering, not in some kind of area that would be true of almost any other bird.
And I said they had eye coverings. That's not, I didn't mean to do that. They have nasal coverings to help them block off getting water up
Oh, cool.
their noses while they dive. And that's not common either. And although that's an interesting thing to me, why isn't that more common? Why don't more birds that go into water have that? Why don't kingfishers have that?
Right.
They don't. I don't know why. And I actually don't know how kingfishers don't drown. I don't have a good explanation for that.
Well, I was wondering how often, coming back to RJ's comment about the rushing water. So one good thing about this habitat too is there may not be very many predators that are going to actually come along a stream like that to hunt dippers. Not none, but there are. And I was wondering whether, I mean, they mentioned floods. So if a flood comes down that river, is it possible that every once in a while dippers get swept away because and maybe they do.
Something has to happen to give them that big of a distribution. I mean, they can clearly move somehow. They're sitting on little pieces of wood in the stream as they careen down.
See,
it's their version of whitewater rafting.
Yeah.
So, growing up in Arizona, southern Arizona, a lot of the streams are ephemeral. They're not even running all year, but the rains come in the winter, and every once in a while, dippers would show up along the streams around Tucson, Arizona, and that was always. I mean, again, it's kind of like this mythical bird just sort of showing up.
Well, apparently they don't have. They're not huge amounts of conservation concern, except that population in the eastern part. But they can be very ephemeral in places. This is the big concern about them. As you change water use, you can really take away habitat, or you can create it, because apparently they like to be around some dams that have been created. So if you create running water in places where you also have the rocks, they'll move into the place. But they're also pretty sensitive, and the ones in the east, this is what people are worried about, is runoff and pollution and things like that are in the water makes them vulnerable to population declines there. So, but then the other thing I never thought of about them is apparently they do not tolerate heat at all. So they die when if it gets to a human body, internal body temperature, 98.6, they're dead.
Oh, wow.
So what happens as we warm the environment, right? I mean, it's not usually that hot in those places in British Columbia, but we are making it substantially warmer, such that what do heat waves do to these birds?
I think nobody's really done much research on the birds in places like Costa Rica, and certainly up in the mountains of Costa Rica it can be quite a bit cooler than it is in the lowlands. But I'd be interested in some of the temperature regimes that those birds are living in, and some of the details of that.
Yeah, I don't know much about that kind of stuff. There doesn't seem to be very much literature about that.
You guys will absolutely flip when you see your first dipper.
And you will be able
I'm
to
really excited
identify it. You will be able to identify it. Nothing else behaves like that. Even before you see a color or anything like that, you'll see it bopping up and down by the water's edge.
And at the same time, I feel like it's unlikely that you won't go to some places and look at a whole bunch of rocks and go, there should be a dipper here, and not see one.
Yeah. Yeah.
In my head, I always thought they were just kind of up in the Pacific Northwest or up in like Canada near where Shannon's from. I didn't realize that they have big their distribution is. Like that we
Yeah.
could have. I mean, we've been in areas before where
Where
we
they
could have
should
seen
have
them and
been.
didn't
Yeah.
even think to look for them. So that's cool
And
to
and
know.
again, that's the thing. It's like when you're looking for dippers, in many ways, you're not looking for anything else because you're literally along the stream. As Shannon was saying earlier, I've always had this thought, and I can't remember whether there's any actual research on this, but those areas are so noisy that
No.
I would think for a lot of birds, communication would be so thwarted that they actually avoid them as essentially areas, that you want to breed in. So if you're in a valley in the Rockies, you're going to want to stay away from the stream just because you can't hear what's going on.
Your job
But
is to not trip and fall into the water because you have to get pretty close to the streams. And at least where I've gone looking for them, it's, treacherous walking.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Especially if you're clumsy.
where I was telling you guys about seeing him last summer was right along the Columbia River, and it was a stream it was a tributary of the Columbia, but the place I went to, it was right at the mouth, and I got there, and I hadn't been, I wanted to see him, and I hadn't seen him around trail in any of the places, in part because I probably, again, I think a lot of times you really have to make a concerted effort to look for them. And so this stream was a place I was going to every couple days, and I just started scoping the stream every time I went, and it was probably the third or fourth time before suddenly it was like, wait a minute, that gray rock just moved. And across the side there were two dippers just coming down the stream looking for these aquatic invertebrates that they.
Wow.
cool.
So we have 88 of them in our collections,
wow.
and we have 282 in the genus. So of all of the species, we have 88 of the American dippers.
And
then
Are there
again,
any other birds that are in the same family that are similar? I mean, this seems like this is so unique. Like, is there
that's the
anything that's-
family.
Okay.
and growing up, I would have said that a lot of the books describe the family as being the sister to the Turdidae, the robins. But the genetic work that's been done lately has put them as the sister to the starlings.
Yeah, but that's not.
I know.
I don't think that's right. I do think that there was starlings, but I don't think there were starlings. I do think they're with old world flycatchers, Musicapidae, and thrushes, Turdidae. So there's a bit of uncertainty in kind of how those things are all related to each other. But I don't buy starling. You can buy it if you want, but I'm not putting my money on starling.
Well, it's one thing I didn't find, and I know it's got to be out there, is somebody estimating how old the various species and the 5 species are relative to one another.
Yeah, I don't
And
know
that would be really interesting. I mean, I think the prediction would be that the old world ones would be most divergent, but I mean, again, they have just this incredible distribution. So and it's also neat the places that they don't occur. So, we're talking about them having to disperse to get across, and they clearly got from North America to South America or vice versa, and from North America to Europe and vice versa. But they don't occur in sub-Saharan Africa. So they get to the mountains.
Too hot.
Yep, too hot, right. And they don't occur in Australia.
Too hot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So how many birds are named Dipper? Like how many, and what are those other names?
Yeah, they're literally just there are 5
these
members
5.
of the family.
And what
And
are
they're
they?
all so there's European dipper, I think it's called brown dipper, which are those are the 2 Asian ones. North American or American dipper, and then when you get into South America, there are 2 that are called white capped, which is a northern one. It's a really neat bird you can see in the streams like around Machu Picchu in the Andes. And then there's the last one is I always remember it as Cinclus
Rufous-
schultzi. It's
Yeah, just
brown-throated dipper.
rufous-throated. So there's
Rufous-throated.
white-throated, brown dipper, American dipper, white-capped dipper, and rufous-throated dipper.
Wow.
And that covers, those words cover about the extent of the coloration that's in
Yeah.
these
Okay.
birds.
But
Yeah,
again,
pretty
they're living. They're spending most of their lives in this completely
Yeah, gray, deep
low sensory.
greens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it like camo?
No.
It is. It's
well,
very.
it kind of is, but not like camo clothes or anything like that. But
I feel like
but
when
the
you
same
fly
kind of
fish,
idea,
you
right?
try to look like
Yeah.
really blah, you know.
Yeah, well,
And-
they
and
certainly
I-
blend in until you
Oh,
see
yeah.
them move. As soon as you see them
Yeah.
move, you know that they're there. But John's right; you can't. If they're standing against a rock, they're not moving. You're not going to see them from a distance.
And the sexes are similar. And I guess males are bigger than females, but which I don't necessarily understand for a bird like that. But it
Because
sounds
they're
like
monogamous, I think, right? They're not
there are a few
not
examples of
polygynous or polyandrous.
there's a few examples of that happening, but not very many. And one of the things is both males and females sing.
Oh,
And some of that may be because they've got to find each other. And because they're not migrating, both males and females can defend the territory.
huh. I had a question going back to like their nesting. What does it look like for chicks to hatch and make their way into the world in these like rushing waters and being under waterfalls? And
Seriously.
has there been any studies on that or any video or anything? I mean,
I don't know, but it's by definition, as you're right, it's got to be a source of potential mortality. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Learn fast or die. That's the.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
then do they
those
teach
behaviors
the
must be
chicks-
innate, don't you think, RJ? Some of those
Okay.
behaviors,
Yeah,
like closing off
right.
your nasal passages. That just must be innate, because otherwise you drown
Yeah.
while you learn.
you can't be the kid,
Right.
the young dipper asking for nose plugs.
Yeah, and some flippers.
Yeah.
God,
Yeah, he's not gonna make it.
No.
It's like, we'll try next year.
Yeah.
yeah, I never really thought about what it must be like for the baby dippers to take a look outside of that and think, "What the heck? Now what?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. What do I have to do with
And
that?
you're right, RJ. I mean, I've seen things like, I've seen young Cooper's hawks in our backyard that were actually like one came down, went after a chipmunk, and then after that went up in the tree, and then it just started dropping on this branch and kind of playing with the branch in the yard like it was. And I'm sure it was basically practicing, but it was on its own. And if you're a dipper, Shannon said, well, maybe there's some innateness in this, but you've got to figure out how to dive down, and then not only dive down, but recognize what you're going after when you're diving down. And some of these things like I was thinking with these insect orders, so caddisflies and mayflies and what's the other one? Stoneflies have all these interesting larval cases. It's like some of them put stones around the stoneflies actually put stones
Yeah.
around themselves as larvae, probably to protect themselves from things like dippers.
Yeah, they
wow.
smash
Wow.
those things open and get the things out that are inside. And they also, if it's curled up, they uncurl it before they eat it, which is kind of interesting.
wow.
That's interesting.
Ew.
Huh.
But that's
Cool.
like how do you learn to do that the first time?
Right.
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 Wow, that's crazy.
So, I've always wondered, now I know, why they're called water ouzels. So in Britain, they were called water ouzels, which is a really strange
That's a
word.
cool name.
Yeah.
Very memorable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that word.
They've been, I think, Cinclus is Greek for kinklos, which means small. So that's where their Latin name comes from. And ouzel means blackbird. And that's an archaic name for a European blackbird. And so they're named that way, even though that makes zero sense to me. Like 0.000 to me.
People hit, they over, when you don't have much information, you may seize on something. I mean, they're kind of, like I said,
Maybe.
I said earlier that I thought they were related to thrushes, and I think that's partly because they're kind of chunky passerine birds. Robins kind of have a big chest, and dippers have an even bigger chest, I would say, kind of relative to the body of the bird. So,
Okay.
Amanda, you kept saying that they look like robins when we were
Yeah.
watching videos earlier.
That's what I thought. I thought they looked
Okay.
small, like the size of a robin. Yeah, and just kind of plain. Like I was shocked at how plain they looked.
they're very plain, and so that's definitely, it's all about the behavior when you see them. They're hopping up and down, walking in rocks, and then just the way they move through their environment is just absolutely unique in terms of being so adapted to these rushing streams the way they are.
Yeah, and you can't take a moment off if you're in the stream, right? So you have X number of seconds to breathe underwater before you have to get back out to breathe. But you have to stay underwater. So not only have you made your bones denser, they have to use their wings all the time when they're under the water to stay under the water and not to come back up. The natural instinct of a bird is to come back up, right? Everything about it is set to be aerial dynamic. And, staying underwater is not really good. So they have to really work hard to stay under the water.
I was thinking that I wonder if, like, it's kind of a sigh of relief, or just like they feel like going down to the coast in the winter where you don't have to deal with the rapids all the time must be like,
right.
vacationing in the Caribbean or something. It's like,
Except you have
Yeah.
nothing
Except
to
that-
eat.
well, that's the thing. That there it is. What is there to
And
eat?
it's too
for sure.
hot, so you're going to die on your Caribbean little excursion.
And so that, coming back to the conservation angle, one of the things that was brought up is they like clear streams, and so do the invertebrates that they eat. And so if you dam things up and you get a lot of silt in the water, they can't find what they're going to eat, and the populations of the insects go down, and they'll leave and move on. And so
if you get erosion, if you change the water regime such that there's erosion and the rocks kind of wash away, which can happen because there are a lot of dams in British Columbia, you can see this kind of stuff happening, then they don't have a habitat to do anything in if you've taken away too many of the rocks. So you get silt,
if
you
you're
get pollution,
doing
you
things
take away
like-
the rocks.
grazing cattle up in the Rockies, and some of those streams get pretty messed up. I'll be willing to bet that affects the dipper populations along those streams.
All right. Well, I think we're kind of getting close on time. Or is there anything else on the dipper before we do have one mailbag question?
Where are you going?
Well, it's
when are you
it's-
going to British Columbia?
That's like on our list now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need to go to
Even when you go
Vancouver
back to
Island.
Colorado,
It was before. Yeah.
you can find some streams in northern Colorado that'll have dippers
Yeah.
on them.
I mean, the good thing is that eBird will help you know where and when to go. So
Yeah.
you can look at eBird
Cool.
lists and you'll know the best places recently that people have seen dippers in. That's a good
Yeah.
use of technology.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so curious. I want to check like northern Colorado, like where we go in
Yeah.
Steamboat.
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah,
I've never heard of
there's
them.
there's a lot
Yeah.
of rivers out there, and yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're missing
there.
one of the cutest birds ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we ready for this mailbag question?
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's have it.
So this is from Amy in Maine, And Amy says, I cannot express enough how much I enjoy you four. Your humor, your love of birds, your love of what you do, how you share, not holding back. You are all heartening in a world that feels like it's without its ethics, moral compass, compassion for creatures who are not humans. I love everything about your show. From Amy in Maine. And then she says, P.S. I just discovered, and I don't know if I'm going to get this right. Is it the Great Potu?
Oh boy, yes,
Yeah.
great Bluetooth.
Great Potu. And then she said, I can't seem to find an audio recording of a nighthawk diving. I've heard one in my life on an evening walk and upon turning down my dirt driveway. I was startled out of my skin, but somehow knew that I had what I had heard. A bird from the nightjar family, if I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah.
So-
Well, thank you, Amy.
Yes.
It's really
Yeah,
sweet.
what a kind
right?
note. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that was so
Oh.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah. We
could-
I don't
we
know
could-
about you guys. Do you think of people listening when we're talking? I don't think about that
I
very
don't.
often. Until you get to the
I think of you
mailbag.
three.
That's exactly right. You get to the mailbag, and then I'm like, oh my God, what have I said that's stupid that I've embarrassed myself by? And now people are listening. Oh my God. And it's not just my family, apparently.
So
Wait, so,
So-
can you tell us about that bird she's talking about? The potu?
so these nocturnal birds that are sometimes called goatsuckers, the order is Caprimulgiformes. But it's gotten crazy because it turns out hummingbirds, when people like Shannon and the group that she worked with put together phylogenies, the nocturnal things that were called nightjars don't always come together. It's a very old group, and
Yeah.
hummingbirds are embedded within. And so the great potu is in the family Nyctibiidae, and then the common nighthawk that she's talking about is in the Caprimulgidae. And so there's a lot of evolution in between, even though they look very similar. Coming back to the talk about rictal bristles when we were talking about red-ruffed fruit crow, these birds have these rectal bristles to catch insects and things. But coming back to vocalizations, so we should play common nighthawk because
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
it's
That booming thing.
they're
And
they call it
Amy
booming,
shouldn't-
but it's
but Amy should also know that sound comes from its wings. That is not a vocalization. It comes from the way it flexes the wings when it's diving down. So
Oh, crazy.
super
Here,
cool.
I can play it. So this is both the song and the wing sound. So I think it's going to play the song first, and then we'll hear the wing. Did it come through?
Yeah,
very well.
Yeah.
that sounds awesome.
So is that its wings? It's while it's flying.
Yeah.
Or...
So it's actually going into a big dive.
Yeah. So
And I think that's
Oh.
one of the reasons why it scares you so much is because you can hear them up high giving that beep, beep call. And then suddenly, like something goes past you and does that wing thing on a just, it's probably coming from 100, 150 feet up.
Oh wow.
And it's a display and it's great.
So is that similar to like what a woodcock does? Like a woodcock makes a noise with its feathers when it's
Yeah.
flying, right?
Yeah,
So- okay.
Lots of
okay.
birds do. We'll talk about mannequins, for example, someday to talk about the sounds the bizarre sounds that are wing sounds that you would never kind of guess, including one of them called club-winged mannequin, that when it vibrates its wings, it makes a perfect harmonic. So that took, again, high-speed videography and a lot of care and detail work in the field to record that bird to figure out how on earth where that sound was coming from. Is it a vocalization or not? And it turns out it's not. And its wing feathers are really weird, like kind of gnarly. Next time you come in the museum, actually, we should do that one next time we do a little field
Oh,
trip
okay.
thing, because that bird is
Cool.
bizarre looking. Its wings are bizarre.
Well, and what we should look at is common nighthawk relative to great potu. So great potu is this. It's called great because it's probably about a foot and a half
wow.
or longer. And it's got a lot of feathers, so the body is probably much smaller, but it looks like it's the size of a barred owl almost.
Oh, wow.
And they're found throughout the northern part of South America up into Central America. And the first time I ever heard one, I actually thought we were listening to a jaguar
Oh, man.
because it's
Yeah.
literally this explosive sound that kind of goes.
Oh,
It's
my
totally the
God.
sound of a
Cool.
scary movie.
That's crazy.
I was like, what was that?
Oh, man.
Absolutely
RJ, can
amazing.
you pull that sound up? Well, how do you
Oh,
spell POTO? Is it?
POTOO.
POTOO.
Okay.
Here we go. Let's see if this will work.
Oh, so that is
That's
actually
not it.
that's common POTO.
That's not it?
That's a
Okay.
different
Oh,
It's
Oh,
common
okay.
POTO.
okay.
Which
That
is
sounds much
which is
sweeter.
Yeah.
than the
which is about half the
actual-
time. And that's actually one of my favorite all-time favorite calls to hear that thing in the forest
so
because it's
cool.
literally you're in the forest, it's dark, and suddenly you hear this thing just go. Yeah, no, they're
Oh,
beautiful.
cool.
That was
But
good.
great POTO is
Yeah,
definitely
that's way too sweet. That does not
For a
strike
great POTO.
fear in the hearts of people. What you're going to play now does.
That's awesome.
Yeah, let me.
yeah.
I don't know why I
I
couldn't
mean,
find it.
I wonder if she couldn't find it, so there's got to be something on
Oh.
Sino Canto.
No, I listened to it today. There
Okay.
are vocalizations of. Oh, I have my phone off, so
You know, and it's interesting because
Oh no, I think
That's-
this is the.
that
was
common POTO.
common. Okay.
This is a great family that we could do an episode on at some point, just
Oh.
because they're
Cool.
incredibly cool. They during the day they roost out in the kind of pretty much in the open where they just get on the end of a branch and sit there with their heads looking up, and they look like the end of a branch. Their
Oh my
their
gosh.
plumage and everything. And so when we get into the museum and we look at specimens, we can pull one out relative to a common nighthawk, and they're just
Oh, cool.
they're. It looks like a great
What's-
great POTO will look like it could swallow a common nighthawk whole.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh. Awesome.
They're incredible
So-
birds.
I have a YouTube video that apparently has it, but there's an ad. So here, and you guys couldn't hear it, right? Because I just started playing the ad. I'm gonna send it to you, RJ, and then
Okay.
You
and then I
can-
can play it.
you can let it
Okay.
play, but then cut out the stupid ad part that you're gonna see.
Okay.
And this bird's gape is enormous. I can't
Okay.
even begin to tell you what the face of this bird looks like.
Oh, crazy.
So it's got the usual characteristics of nightjars. It's wide.
There it goes.
Okay. All right. Here we go.
So what do you think, Amanda? Is that my gobble
That's-
gobble gobble? Or
that was awesome.
Wow.
Jen, your bird calls, your bird invitations are awesome. Yeah. That
every once in a while there's something that I can that one's kind of just because it is such a just a growl, just a
Yeah.
explosive growl.
Yeah. I can't
Can you
believe that
guys
was a bird.
Sounded
whistle?
so
I can't whistle.
cool.
Can you guys whistle?
Really?
I
can
can't
whistle.
whistle.
Yeah.
No.
Well, there's hope for you, RJ. You can learn some bird calls and go out and do it. I cannot.
I can whistle, and this is I can do a laser beam noise whistle, which is check this out.
Oh gosh.
It's one of my dumb talents
Unknown
that I never get to.
talents.
Unknown talents. I never get to do that ever, so I had to show it off. I
That-
can't do any bird noises.
That's an uncontrolled variable.
Oh,
So the neat thing about common potu is you could do it as a whistle, or you could kind of say it goes. And it's the question is what would win the contest?
Yeah. I wonder if a bird would answer back to
Oh,
that. Yeah,
so
for sure.
yeah.
So the first night we had great potu, the thing started responding, and that's when it kind of dawned on me that it was like, wait a minute, I don't think a jaguar would.
That's awesome.
You're luring the jaguars
Exactly.
in.
It's like,
You're revealing your location.
is this a good idea?
That's so funny. That would be.
That's how bad you want to see a jaguar, that you're willing to
Yeah.
reveal your
Yeah,
location
yeah.
by imitating it.
Lure it over.
No, more than anything, it was just like, I think my thought was at the time was, if it was a jaguar, the fact that we had headlamps and things would probably scare it off, and
Yeah.
I still just wanted to know what it was. And then it
Yeah.
became really clear that it was flying around, and that's when things finally clicked in, and it was like, oh, wow.
You were like, a flying
even cooler.
jaguar. Oh dear.
Oh,
That's really
all
cool.
right. Well, thank you, Amy, for the
Yeah,
question,
Amy,
and thank you for
so
listening,
much.
and for the really nice note too. That was
Yeah,
really special
that
to
made
read.
us feel so
These
good.
days,
Thank you.
Little
Yeah.
things make a big difference.
It's true.
Yeah.
That made such a
That was so
difference. I ran
kind.
and showed all the students what what Amy had sent to us. So
Oh,
Yeah,
as
that's
I
awesome.
chided
That was
them for not
wonderful.
putting their presence on our podcast in their CVs. Anyways,
all right. Well, anybody want to close it out on this one?
John, do your jaguar sound.
Yes.